My connection with nature. That's almost difficult to answer. Well, I'm an artist, and what I do for a living is animal communication, which is telepathic communication with animals, and hands-on healing. When I was young, I communicated, I mean, all my life I communicated with animals, and so do most people, unconsciously, without knowing. Sometimes you know and sometimes you don't, but it's a process, but not one that's very, very much aware or a conscious process. But something happened to me in 2003. Something happened that I began to process everything differently. And the first thing that happened was just these sensations suddenly became so much more vivid. My rational mind took a little vacation. And so I was able to experience the world without the filter of my rational mind for just a few days. And even when my rational mind came back in and reestablished itself, I remembered what the world felt like without it, and I could go there. I remembered how to go there, and it felt like sinking down inside my head. Like this is sort of like a pool, and I would sink down underneath the pool into the bottom part of my head, and down there I would experience differently, and I could experience communications from animals or from nature. It's like playing charades a little bit. I see pictures and I hear a soundtrack of music or emotions. They're kind of mingled together. And occasionally I'll get a word, but usually the words come when I come back up and I come through, like through the pool of water. It's like alphabet soup. I come to the top, and then when I reach the surface of the water, I have the ability to gather the necessary words, and I put them together to represent as faithfully as I can the experience, and then I come back up and I talk. And when I'm talking to a client for animal communication, I go down for the animal and then up for the human, and back and forth. And so my first experience with that, my mother called me to tell me that a very beloved cat belonging to my aunt and uncle had escaped from a house that wasn't his own. They were traveling and they needed to leave, and they needed to find him before they left. They didn't know where he was. And my mother was certain that I could help, and I wanted to help. And so I sat down and I said, let me help. May I speak to the cat? And then I felt the sinking down inside my head. And it was just dark for a minute, and then I saw a translucent mask of a cat, and my face stretched to fit the face of the cat, and I could feel my brain changing shape. I could feel my ears and my whiskers. I could feel myself turning into a cat, and then I was sharing his consciousness. And so I greeted him, and I asked him to show me all this is nonverbal, to open his eyes and show me, and what his senses, let me share his senses. And then I could smell a basement, I could smell earth and bricks, and I could see darkness and a little bit of dirt. And I thought probably, and this was my human mind that I brought with me, he was in a basement of a nearby house. And so I told him that his family needed to leave, and if he wanted to go with them, he would have to leave the place that he was and go back to the place he came from. And he told me he was too frightened to do it, but he would do it after dark. And I told him that we would have someone waiting for him, and the door opened, and they would leave someone to meet him. And that's exactly what he did. And we did our part. We met him with someone. He did his part. He left the basement after dark, and he came back to his family. And that was the first concrete experience I had, where not only did I feel that I was communicating, but I had an outward proof in the world that I was expecting, if that makes sense. In that he came back. And otherwise I would have said, oh, I imagined the whole thing. But there he was back, and he'd been gone couple days, so it was surprising that he came back when he did.
Not surprising.
It surprised me a little bit because I continue to think that I've made these things up, that I am making them up just because that's what the prevailing belief in society is, that what I do is impossible. Therefore, I must be imagining it or making it up.